Have you ever made beef jerky? Well, it's super easy to make and it's delicious.
A big thanks to borniak smokers for sponsoring this video.
Of course, it involves a big cut of beef. Now that might be a little bit scary, but actually it isn't. Beef jerky is not scary and it's not difficult to make. But there are a few things that you need to think about to make your beef jerky absolutely freaking delicious. And don't worry, I will explain all of them to you. The first thing that we need to talk about is what are you going to use to make beef jerky? Well, here it is. This is the only cut of beef that is actually perfect for beef jerky. It's the eye of round. And it's the most useless cut of beef I have ever encountered in my entire life. And other than making beef jerky out of it, I can't come up with anything that it's good for. Because it's tough and, well, it's tough no matter what you do with it. But if you cook it for a long time, it becomes dry instead of really nice and soft like a chuck steak. It's really tough because of its long muscle fibers. You can actually see them sitting at the end of the cut here. Big, tough muscle fibers. Most cuts of beef have a little bit of fat on them. Either it's intermuscular fat or it sits on top of the meat. And that meat will become rancid when you store your beef jerky. We don't want that. Once you selected the right type of beef, it's a matter of slicing it into thin strips. How thin do you need to go? That is the big question. The first thing that you want to do is get a start, because you see that you have a little uneven edge at the end, and here at the point it's not even either. So you're going to start by cutting off the edge like so. Oh, and another thing that I haven't told you yet, and that is quite obvious, keep your meat at cold temperatures while processing it. Well, now at the moment here it's cold outside, so it's safe to process it, but keep in mind that you don't let the beef come up to temperatures too high. I would rather have it at a temperature of around 2 degrees Celsius, which is the perfect temperature to process it. You can even freeze it a little bit, so when you start slicing into it, it stays more straight. Now you have a good idea of what the beef jerky will look like. It's just a flat piece of beef, but it's still strong and tough. I can't tear this up even if I wanted to. You can see that this part is thinner than this part, and that happens when you cut it yourself and you don't use machines. Now it does matter because the thin part will dry out faster than the thick part. That's why I'm gonna put them on my cutting board and flatten them. You can use a hammer, you can use your hand, and that's the beauty about this eye of round. No matter how much you hit it, it will stay completely intact. Now you have a mountain of beef in front of you. And you want to turn this into real beef jerky that tastes freaking amazing. And there are 3 ways of adding flavor. One is by brining the beef. That means you're going to take some water and you're going to add some spices and some salt to it. And through the osmosis effect, all the flavors get drawn into the meat. Another option, which is better, is to make a marinade. You're going to mix some oil with some spices, and then you're going to have lovely flavors. You're going to put your beef in it and let it sit for at least 2 hours. The cool thing is that you added all this flavor, but you also added oil. And the oil is a protection layer and it protects the beef from drying out. Now, since we want the beef to become dry, so it becomes jerky, you kind of need to look for the other alternative, which is a dry brine. And that means we're going to take our beef and we're going to sprinkle on our seasoning, which is herbs including salt, and that will draw out the moisture from the beef and will put flavor inside of it. I'm going to give the seasoning a few minutes to draw out some of that moisture that will help stick to it. And then I'm going to flip them around, season the other side with a heavy coat as well. And now we have seasoned beef jerky. You might think, whoa, that's a lot of seasoning. Well, it is, but with beef jerky, you're drawing out the moisture. And by getting rid of the moisture, you're also going to lose some of the flavor. So more flavor means a better tasting beef jerky. Now, because of the drying out and helping with the process, this is my favorite way to make beef jerky. Only thing I need to do now is to take this, put it in the fridge, let it sit there for 2 hours, and I just love to make a few racks of beef jerky with different types of flavor. And most barbecue rubs are suited for this purpose, but make sure that it has plenty of salt in it. After about 2.5 hours in the fridge, they firmed up a little bit. Some of the moisture has been drawn out and it's evaporated, and now we have a little bit firmer, a little bit drier beef jerky. However, it's not really beef jerky yet. We still need to dry it out even further. And drying out is the main thing. But if you want to dry it, you have multiple options of drying it. You can do like they do in South Africa and just hang it somewhere and let it dry. Or you use a dryer like this. You can set it to temperature, slide in the meat, and just wait for a couple of hours and your beef jerky is done. Or, and this is the version that I prefer, you use a smoker, because that is going to deliver us a little bit more flavor, beautiful effect, and very, very tasty beef jerky. First thing that I'm going to do is set this to temperature. Now, if we're cooking beef jerky, we want to make sure that we don't go over a certain temperature. You don't want to go over cooking a steak. So drying temperatures is around 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. And that also means you can use any device you want as long as you can take it as low as 50 degrees Celsius and keep it there for a long period of time. 65 is like the maximum that I would say. Maybe 70 degrees Celsius, maybe. Not much higher than that, because you need the difference between the outside air and the drying temperature not to be too big. It's got to be close together. It's got to be friends. They got to be hugging each other. So I'll set this to 50 degrees Celsius, which is more than enough. There we go. Now, since I'll be smoking, I'm going to put some smoke wood in this box. And look at this. Ta-da! Special smoke wood, and I'll be using some BBQ. I don't know what that is, but I do know that this is beach chips. I don't need too much of it, because a small piece of meat only needs a small amount of smoke. And by starting small, you can always add more smoke flavor later. So you're going to be good anyway. Now all I need to do now is load this up with the beef jerky. Now it's time to close the lid, let it come up to temperature. And of course, there's this final thing that we gotta keep in mind. We want to get rid of the moisture. So therefore, we need to open the vents all the way. And as well, the bottom vent, all of that moisture's gotta go through and it's gotta get away from that beef jerky. Now don't ask me how long that's going to take, because it all depends on the device that you're using. If you're using a hot air oven with a fan that's blowing really fast, it's going to go faster than if you use natural airflow like this. The beef jerky has been smoking for 2 hours, and let's see what it looks like. We can see that it starts to firm up a little bit. It's losing some moisture. The edges are starting to firm up, getting a little crispy feeling over here. In itself, that's great. You see the moisture is evaporating. That is a good thing. And you see that the color changed from red to a more brownish color. That's the color of smoke. Now what we don't want is this to get over smoky. We just want a light smoke to it. And I feel that this is enough for a good smoke profile. So after 2 hours of a light smoke, I'm going to switch off my smoke unit and I'm going to let the borniak continue to dry out my beef jerky. There we have it. It's been a total cooking time of 5 hours, and now they are hard like cardboard. Beef jerky. Will it bend? Yes, it will bend. Remember this one? This is the Tweety beef jerky. As you can see, it's now completely dry. Now, do you want your beef jerky dry like this? No, you don't. You want your beef jerky to be somewhat moisturous, but then it also has to have that tear, that shred up. And that's why there's another step to making beef jerky. You're gonna put all that beef jerky in a Ziploc bag, close it off, set it in the fridge, and then tomorrow, that's going to be the most epic beef jerky you ever had. If you want to make this at home, the recipe is also on PitmasterX.com, including the rubs.